Hi, welcome to episode 81 of the Toilet Paper Diaries, and this is the Golden Throne Awards. We'll be reviewing the good, the bad, and the ugly of the last 12 months and awarding who we believe really made a big impact. Some of them will be going down, flushed away forever, but some will be left to float on top to be admired by the universe. It will make sense. Stick with us. It's the Toilet Paper Diaries.
And welcome to the annual Golden Throne Awards. If you have been having your head on the toilet for the last 12 months, possibly you do not know exactly what happened this year. But if not, let's just get reminded. Have a look.
Absolutely. This is the real life Game of Thrones. And the pun is intended with the Toilet Paper Diaries looking at who's going to win a Golden Throne Award. And we're going to go to our very first category, and that is the most ignored news. These are the things that happened that you wouldn't have believed happened, and because we had COVID to deal with, we just ignored and won't even think about again. So the nominees are murder hornets. Do you remember the murder hornets? They were all going to kill us, certainly in America. Big bite-sized things that were going to sting us all to death. And they were pipped at the post by coronavirus.
Our next nominee are going to be the monkeys getting and stealing the COVID-19 samples. If you possibly remember, apparently there was this lab that they left the window open. Some monkeys went inside and stole some of the samples. And of course that created big chaos. After 24 hours, completely ignored in the news.
Nothing surprises me. Your next nominee is Poland invading the Czech Republic. Did you know that happened? Well, it only happened for a short amount of time, and both countries went, you know what, should we just leave it there? Should we just carry on? You go back? And went, yeah, okay. And it disappeared. But it could have been an incident in any other year, but not in 2020. It wasn't big enough.
Our next nominee are going to be the UFOs that the Pentagon released the footage, and it was all over the news for 1 or 2 news cycles. It was trending on Twitter and YouTube, and within 48 hours, it disappeared from the news. In any other year, this would have been huge news, but not in 2020.
Probably because nobody could understand why aliens would want to take a planet as damaged as ours has been in this year. Next nominee is asteroid narrowly missing Earth. Did you know before the US elections, we were all meant to be hit by a huge asteroid that we didn't think was going to hit, but there was a slight percentage chance it would have done a huge amount of damage to the planet. Well, it didn't arrive, and we stayed damaged anyway. So, who cares? Next.
Next nominee is going to be the Donald Trump impeachment in January. Actually, it was in December 2019 when this whole ordeal started. But the House of Representatives and the Senate decided that they didn't want to proceed, and he was just absolved. There was no issues, but little did we know what was going to happen afterwards.
They would have made a big thing of it, but they had bigger things to contend with literally about a month later. But around about the same time, the whole world was looking at our next nominee, which is the Australian bushfires. Do you remember the chaos as we saw so many species wiped away forever, and the unstoppable climate problems that were being caused at the beginning of the year? Now, it seems like a mere hors d'oeuvre.
And our final nominee is going to be the war with Iran. I remember it was January 6th, 2020, that we woke up with the news that the United States has now bombed Iran and killed General Soleimani, and we thought that that might be a start of a huge conflict. Nothing happened.
Which I'm so glad about. Lots of friends in America, lots of friends in Iran, and lots of friends who would have been involved. All gone, but they don't even count. So when we look at it, the winner of the Golden Throne Award for the most ignored news event in a year's cycle is Donald Trump's impeachment.
The yeas are 230, the nays are 197, present is 1. Article 1 is adopted. The question...
It was a big thing, it was an old thing, and it will stay in history, but nobody cares anymore.
Our next category, we decided to call it the Fake News Fever Award. And this one is an interesting one because we're going to be covering all the people that were fibbing or lying during the fake news cycles. And our first nominee is going to be Rudy Giuliani, which I think Rudy, it's a prime character in many of our categories because of all the crazy things that he has been doing, besides leaking oil out of his head and besides getting caught in bed in the Borat film. But yeah, Rudy is #1 nominee.
Brilliant. And he farts in court, which is something you can't remember or you should never forget. Next up is Kayleigh McEnany, who, as the press secretary for Donald Trump, had to come up with some big whoppers, covering for her boss. And only time will tell how many were true and how many were not true. But with fake news, does it really matter?
Yeah. Our next nominee is going to be Tucker Carlson. Tucker is a very famous news anchor in Fox News, which seems to be always talking with the truth. But if we just measure how many Pinocchios he has had as they rate them, sometimes we have absolutely no idea.
And our next nominee is CNN. Now, CNN, some people believe, some people don't believe, but it doesn't really matter. The ultimate fact is, to a large amount of a population, maybe even 48% of the US, believe that CNN and MSNBC and BBC and many others are actually fake news. In fact, now many believe that Fox News is also fake. So is that true? Is it not true? I suppose it depends on what you call the actual truth or manufactured truth.
And our last nominee is going to be Donald Trump, which, according to many news sources, he has provided us with 20,000 plus lies in 2020. So we just basically have to figure out how much of that is actually true or lie or fake.
And the winner of the Golden Throne Award for the #1 fake news fibber in 2020 is
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. We can't argue that. 20,000 proven lies. The guy is a genius. Some of them are funny, some of them are skeptical, some of them just entertained us, and some of them drove people over a cliff. Take it, leave it, love it, hate it. Donald Trump wins our Golden Throne Award for the Fake News Fibber 2020.
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. You know, and it's true. 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 But it's true. It's true. And it's true. It's true. Actually, that's true.
So our next category for Golden Throne Award is for the weirdest person. And these are people who popped up in the news, made everyone go, and more times than never was on the news cycle just because people were in shock about they didn't believe what was going to come next. In any script or any movie, we would have loved them because of the fact that they were such endearing and unbelievable characters, but in real life, you can't fake this because they were real. And the nominees are, #1, Rudy Giuliani. The guy, love him or hate him, genius, baddie, or just huggable uncle if you don't mind the farts, has all through the year and all through the last couple of years come up with some incredible stories, always loyal to Trump, sometimes mega cringeworthy in the way that he will say things, but most times you can't take your eyes off him because you never know which part of him is going to leak next.
So our next nominee is going to be Tiger King. This one just came out of nowhere, and suddenly it became around March or April 2020 the biggest thing on television, and it just shown people a very weird way of how human beings can be. So that's our second nominee.
And our third nominee for weirdest person is Donald Trump. Now, I know many people are going to go, no, there's nothing weird about him at all. The hair, the drinking the water, the going down the ramp, the dancing, all these elements were kind of weird. Even if you want to say they're not that weird, they're kind of normal for him. Every single time we come out with something even more interesting and challenging. And we're trying our best to be neutral here, but he was very good at it. And the winner is, for the Golden Throne Award for the weirdest person,
Rudy
Giuliani. There we go.
And
We love it.
Here's a compilation of all the craziness that Rudy brought to this year. Have a look.
Put down your crumb. She's 15. She's too old for you.
Why are you
No,
talking?
she's my daughter. Please, take me instead. Take my anus. No, take my anus. Do not have her.
The answer that I gave you is they didn't bother to interview a single witness. Just like you, they don't want to know the truth.
Not part of that.
I will ask that he be disciplined for that. First of all,
Hold on.
first of all,
Odor in the court. Rudy Giuliani is full of hot air. If you like content like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. As Giuliani works to undermine the results of the presidential election, Donald Trump's lawyers' list of awkward media appearances continues to grow. There was the notorious Philadelphia press conference at Four Seasons Total Landscaping, which is, as the name suggests, a landscaping company and not a luxury hotel. Then there was the Washington, D.C. event where he seemingly melted before the cameras as hair dye leaked down his face. And on Wednesday night, there was a chaotic and conspiracy-filled hearing in Lansing, Michigan, in which not one but two fart sounds could be heard as Giuliani spoke about 4 hours into the lengthy event.
single witness. He be disciplined for that. First of
Many people noticed that Jenna Ellis, another attorney assisting Giuliani in spreading lies about Biden's victory, seemed to give him a side-eye glance upon hearing the second fart noise. Too bad she refused to wear a mask.
Rudy's the uncle that everybody wishes they'd had, but just wouldn't own up to. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed having him around all the way through this year. May he continue to inspire and shock us in equal amounts in 2021. Our next award in our Golden Throne Awards is for the Breakout Star of the Year. Now, these are the people who suddenly shot to the headlines and everybody knew exactly who they were. They talked about them. Some loved them, some hated them, some felt emotionally attached to them, but at every stage they started conversations and made a huge impact around the world. And the nominees are, firstly, Tiger King. Joe may have looked like a normal Joe, but in fact, he had so many big cats and bears and wolves in his back garden, and 2 husbands at least to speak of, and he had a death threat feud going on with Carol Baskin, and he might have been impeached, or he might have been sent to prison earlier, and he was sent down for murder charges, and he was running for president, all in the same show. The show was so groundbreaking that you couldn't believe what was coming up next. And it wasn't scripted. It was the real deal. So that's the Tiger King.
The next nominee is going to be Charli D'Amelio. And possibly you have no idea who Charli D'Amelio was. However, she became the biggest star on TikTok. And she got the biggest amount of followers on TikTok. And she created all the incredible trends that got started with TikTok. Guiner Vaynerchuk says, well, if you are not following Charli, you have no clue how social media and video platforms are going to be run. So incredible come out from a start.
Our next nominee is George Floyd. Tragically, the late George Floyd, unknown until his viral video of his last 9 minutes was shown when he was brutally slain by a policeman who kneeled on his neck, which started the I Can't Breathe campaign and also the Black Lives Matter campaign, which erupted all around the planet as people came out in sympathy for systemic racism, for racial injustice, and also the fact that the police, for whatever reasons, weren't the right people when it came to looking after challenges involving people of color. So George Floyd was the spark for something that's been bubbling under for a very long time. So that's why it's George Floyd.
Our last nominee is going to be Blackpink. And if you have teenage daughters or you're a teenage an agent yourself, you possibly have heard of K-pop. K-pop has really broken every single record all over the place. K-pop starts with Korean pop, and there's a number of different groups like BTS and other groups that have really become incredibly famous. And Blackpink was absolutely no exception, and it came out of nowhere. And right now, it's one of the biggest influencers in the world. So our winner for the Golden Throne Award on this category, it's going to be
Tiger King.
Tiger King.
Without a doubt, what he did was bonkers. He's in prison now. He may well end up or not on the list of people who gets pardoned by Donald Trump on his way out. But one thing's for sure, whether you like him or hate him, Netflix did some incredible business. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but they may well have a season 2. Watch this space. So congratulations to Joe for Tiger King.
It's not every day that a zookeeper went to prison for murder for hire.
There are more captive tigers in the U.S. than there are in the wild throughout the world.
Animal people are nuts, man. They're all crazy. I'm sure y'all got a story to tell.
And next up is a Golden Throne Award for most unexpected behavior. These are the things that happened that we would never have seen if it hadn't been for the different things that happened in 2020. So coronavirus inspired us, it changed us, it drove us bonkers, but it also made us incredibly lazy in lots of different ways. So the first nominee for the unexpected behavior is loving the lockdown. Who would have believed that you'd be working from home, you'd be closer to your family, all living in isolation, but you'd have Stockholm syndrome of saying, actually, I'm in my house all the time. I kind of like it. This isn't as bad as it used to be. And you had to come to that conclusion because you had no choice.
Yeah. Our next nominee is going to be baking sourdough bread. Who would have said this would be a thing? But suddenly everybody was cooking their own bread. They were baking their own cakes. They were doing all sorts of things in the kitchen.
Our next nominee is sniffing your clothes. Now that sounds as gross as you know what I'm talking about, and it really is. When you're not going out for meetings and you're not necessarily worried about your personal hygiene because the people that you live with are just as much slobs as you are, you often now look at your clothes, which are only above the waist on Zoom, below the waist, doesn't matter, and you sniff them before you put them on because nobody is going to bump into you and nobody even needs to know you've ever put on perfume or aftershave, or even underarm deodorant. The only person who knows is you. So that's why this nomination is all about sniffing your stuff before you put it on again.
Can you show us exactly how that works, Dave?
How you sniff your stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what happens. You find a nice shirt. Before you put it on, you go, and you go, it's okay. And then you put it on, and then you go, what is that? Ooh, not great. And before you leave to change, you go, we'll be all right.
And our last nominee is going to be not wearing pants. I mean, it became a thing. I mean, right now the sales of pants all over the world went down, and everybody was either in their underwear if everything was fine, or completely naked. So who's going to be the winner?
I don't know who's completely naked because we never find out. I think in your house it must be more interesting than many.
And the winner for this category is going to be
wearing no pants.
Wearing pants. Absolutely. I think that was just the biggest thing in 2020, and it's something that we're all going to remember for a long, long time.
It's the year when the fashion industry went, oh dear, nobody's wearing a suit anymore, and jogging bottoms, cargo pants, or even just big boxer shorts and pajama bottoms became a thing, and they'd never go away again.
Crazy.
And cheers to you. And for goodness sake, if you're going to do video conferencing, don't forget to wear your pants.
Our next category is going to be one-hit wonders. What do we mean by one-hit wonders, Dave?
These are the things that happened once and made you go, oh my goodness, really? And you had to Google it to believe it was a thing. It wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't planned, but it was just, nowadays everybody's on camera and the cameras didn't miss a beat when it came to this. And they kind of made us feel better as they happened, because it made you realize that we're all as mad as each other in this crazy COVID-driven world. And the first nominee for this is the fly that landed on Mike Pence's head during the debates for vice president. He's there delivering his content, making his point, and as he's making his point, a fly made a home on top of his head and stayed there for a 2-minute period, which, let's face it, was the most interesting thing in the entire debate. And the internet found out, the internet believed, and it became a viral sensation. And apparently it's got an agent now as well.
Our next nominee is going to be Dr. Anthony Fauci doing the first inaugural pitch on the 2020 season of the MLB. And this was just insane. I mean, he's been a Washington Nationals fan for a number of years. He goes all the way to the mound, does the entire beautiful movement of he's going to do a pitch, and then he does this. Have a look.
To throw out the ceremonial first pitch. Catching his pitch is Nationals pitcher Sean Doolittle. Dr. Fauci, when you're ready, it's your pitch.
I don't even need to tell you what's going on. You're looking at the image. The ball missed the mark.
Worse from behind.
Fauci fans on Twitter are saying the doctor didn't want anyone to catch
there you go.
anything. That's the joke.
Not the biggest sports star to break out in 2020, and possibly not 2021. But good job, he's good at his other job. Our next nominee, we've mentioned several times before, it's a Tiger King. This guy burst onto the scene, shocked the world, changed the law about having dangerous animals in your back garden, went to prison, and is currently looking at a long stretch of looking through the bars and looking at the sign that says, do not feed the animals, to him. It's a Tiger King.
And our last nominee on this category is going to be Kimberly Guilfoyle. And this is just beyond comprehension. I mean, first of all, I had no clue who she was until this happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty, the best is yet to come.
So the winner for the one-hit wonder, and that is the fly on Mike Pence's head. Congratulations. And you win your Golden Throne Award, and we'll try not to smack you with it, which is what you normally do to a fly. This one is probably long dead because it'll last about 3 days, but you entertained us during the 2 minutes you had on top of his head. And strangely enough, you're watching the Toilet Paper Diaries. These are the Golden Throne Awards, and the best is yet to come.
That is correct. And we go to our next category, which is going to be the most missed.
So with this category, it's really about the people who passed and the things that disappeared. And every single one of them is really important. It's difficult to choose one in particular, so we're going to go through them, and it doesn't really matter in which order. And to be honest with you, in this one, it doesn't really matter who won or who lost. We really missed them all. First on the list is Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther. Now, Chadwick was an incredible actor. He died at 43 from cancer. He had it for 4 years. Now, if you think about the amount of Marvel movies he made and other movies, He was suffering in silence of only his close friends knowing about it during all those incredible stunts and incredible movies. He was visiting cancer patients, children who had cancer, and cheering them up without revealing to them that he was going to pass as well. So when he finally did pass and lost his fight against cancer, the whole world was shocked because there was more, a lot more that was going to come from that incredibly gifted actor. And sadly, that's when it finished. So just like James Dean, Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, or any of those stars where you say, if only they'd lived longer, we would have seen some incredible footage, talent, awards, events, movies. We lost Chadwick Boseman in 2020.
The next nominee on the most missed, it's going to be traveling. And this is something which is very dear to me. I've been doing traveling my entire life since I was a very little kid. And this year has been very different. I think this is the longest time in my life that I have not boarded a plane. And I've checked with many people around the world, and they always agree, yes, absolutely, travel is one of those things that we definitely miss.
If you're lucky, the nearest you got was the end of the road or to the shops, and hopefully not the hospital, but that was pretty much your trouble in 2020. Next on the list of the most missed in 2020 is Sean Connery, the iconic, legendary actor who played James Bond 6 or 7 times, depending on whether you count some of his movies, but also went on to star in Highlander and a ton of other movies, even won an Oscar in The Untouchables, sadly passed away this year. And he passed after being in retirement for quite some time, and so people can still look back at his legacy and say, one of the best actors of all time, and many will turn around and say, but he only ever played himself, but what a self to play. So Sean Connery, we salute you, and we missed you forever since 2020.
Yeah. The next thing that we have missed, and especially for me being partially a Latino, are hugs. I think that is the most, for me it's the most relevant thing on missing. I am fortunate enough to have my wife and my kids to hug, but I miss hugging Dave, and I miss hugging all my other friends around the world. So right now, if you're watching, I am sending you a loving and virtual hug.
That was a beautiful thing to say, and not at all creepy, especially if you're not wearing any pants, as you mentioned earlier. And last but not least of most missed is Kobe Bryant, the incredible basketball player, loved and adored by millions throughout the world, probably billions around the world, who sadly passed in a helicopter accident with his daughter, doing incredible work for people, always somebody who you could rely on, and admired by superstars, by fans, by sports people. And I don't think there's a single person who had a bad word for Kobe Bryant, but we lost him far too young and far too soon, amongst many others. And with this, we'd also like to mention all the people who passed for coronavirus in 2020. You are also nominated as part of this.
And the winner is?
I think the winner is Chadwick Boseman, purely because from a pure movie point of view, and from the legacy and the inspirations that I made to many of the people who are protesting Black Lives Matters, who are looking for a king of Wakanda in real life to step up and be noble and change the opinions of many. He was adored. The Black Panther movie won Oscars and had so many people go and see it of all colors. He was just loved as a superhero and a real superhero in real life. So for me, Chadwick Boseman is probably the most missed character of 2020. Our next category for our Golden Throne Awards 2020 is Social Media Influencer, and we've given it a new title. This is Love 'Em or Hate 'Em. And these are the people that were controversial, that you had a whole movement that would go and die for them, or at least make a big noise about how brilliant they were. But at the same time, on the other side, there are people who just couldn't stand them and thought it was ridiculous and just couldn't understand why anybody would make such a big fuss. And the nominees are, Ernesto?
We're going to start with BTS. BTS, as we were mentioning a little bit earlier on, it's one of those K-pop groups which suddenly are everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look at, they are everywhere. And I just look at them and I go like, what's the point? I honestly do not understand why these kids became so incredibly popular.
Our next nominee is actually Sarah Cooper. And we can talk about her ahead of the third nominee. And you might not know who she is, but what she did was she created an incredible series of viral videos where she was just voicing, lip-syncing Donald Trump, but as different characters in different situations who would be saying something similar just to pastiche it. Now, here's the thing. Many people thought it was brilliant and a great use of comedy. Many people thought it was really insulting and the terrible use of airtime. And some people didn't quite get it, so they thought it was a tribute to Donald Trump. So like her or not like her, she's out there, and congratulations to her for all her success in comedy, jumping up the food chain to become viral with all those videos. That's Sarah Cooper. So you can't talk about Sarah Cooper without talking about the big guy, the big orange guy in the big White House, Donald Trump. Now, when you talk about social media influencer, and you talk about all the things he's done, I don't think there's been a single person on the planet, and I would say ever, in my lifetime, who's been on so many conversations, become such a big household name, and been so divisive about whether people love him, hate him, are indifferent, but they all know him. And here's the thing, so much of our world is gathered around how we think about him, and also how other people think about him. So with Donald Trump, you can't ignore him, or not yet anyway. And for the last 4 years, whether you like or don't like all the things he's been doing, he's been a huge influencer. And so the final nominee is Donald Trump. And the winner is, Ernesto?
Donald Trump. I don't think that there's been anyone else that has created the impact and the waves, whether it is negative or positive, in the news through social media as the Twitter storms from Donald Trump. Right now, Twitter is regulating every single one of his tweets, but still, it is one of those things that you were, oh my goodness, what is he going to tweet next?
And you can't argue with the fact, even if you want to, that you may not like Donald Trump, but he got more votes as a Republican candidate than any other in history and still lost. So you got to put it to him, Donald Trump.
Our next category is going to be social movement of the year. There were many social movements. Some of them were a little bit under the radar. Some of them were incredibly big around the world. And this is what we think are the biggest social movements of 2020.
So our nominees for Social Movements of the Year include the first one, Black Lives Matters. This is the spilling over of social unrest and social protest, more than unrest, all based on the premature death of George Floyd on camera that became a viral video that horrified people all around the world and drove them to look at racial injustice alongside gender injustice and disabled injustice, and it came to a head that maybe the world is geared against certain people in society. That led to marches despite coronavirus, and it led to huge changes in the way that people see how they interact with people of color. And also, and I'll say this from my point of view, I'm sure it's true for many of you, hopefully a big change is going to come. So for me, that's mine, but there's loads more great ones in this category.
Next is going to be the Joe Biden basement campaign. Now, this is a bit of a controversial one because even for President Trump, he was saying, well, you know, every time that he does a rally, there's 15, 20 people, 30, 40 people. While in my rallies, there's 5,000, 6,000 people. What he didn't know was that Joe Biden was using dark social media. I happened to participate in a number of different events carried on through the campaign, and the coordination, the way that the whole campaign was run, it was just absolutely amazing. And it was so incredibly well done that they knew what were going to be the results of the election days before the election was going to take place. And everybody that was not involved, they were saying, well, this is going to be a landslide win from Trump. Till today, they are still debating if this was a stolen election, this was a fake election, or there was a lot of fraud through the election. And from the point of view of somebody that has really seen and seen every single thing that has happened throughout this movement that was under the radar, I can tell you it was brilliant done and executed.
And in complete polar opposite to that, our social media movement of the year next nominee is the Stop the Steal campaign. These were created as a direct result of fighting the election results. Now, the election results were verified right across the board, whether it's the electoral vote, it was Supreme Court, it was the recounts, it was just the local courts in other states. Doesn't matter. Over 50 lawsuits were brought to say that it was unjust, and only one got through on a slight technicality. But it hasn't stopped the fact that this huge Stop the Steal campaign has been gathering momentum and raising about $300 million for Donald Trump. That doesn't necessarily have to be used for trying to get the elections back. It can be used for his legal campaigns, or maybe even to help him split the American country into 2 states. Let's not go there, but Stop the Steal campaign from the point of view of a marketing campaign, if nothing else, has been nothing less than astonishing.
And our last nominee is going to be the Lincoln Project, which I think was the drop that made the water spill. And that, combined with the incredible execution of the Biden-basement campaign, created the change for President-elect Joe Biden to actually win the election. And we can see the work that they have done. Dave, you have some interesting comments also there on the Lincoln Project.
Yeah, the Lincoln Project. Well, what happens is when you are so dead against what's happening to your own party, you decide to go against your own party. This is almost like being a turncoat. This is almost like being a traitor to your own people, unless you believe that what you are doing is going to make such a huge difference that if you don't do it, then you'll lose everything. And that's pretty much how it was driven by everybody who was behind the Lincoln Project. They are the brain trust of the marketing campaign of the Republicans. So the thing that made them so effective is they knew how Republican voters worked. And so they aimed squarely at getting Trump out of office. They were happy with Biden, or unhappy with Biden, but they preferred him as a candidate to allow the Republican Party to close, to heal, and come back later. And what's really strange about it is ultimately it worked. But the guys from the Lincoln Project have never crossed over. They've never said we're Democrats. They've always said they're Republican, and it's going to be interesting to see which Republican Party they will belong to in the post-Trump era.
And the winner
is Black Lives Matters. As a person of color, it was the first time in 50 years I've seen the world unite and turn around and say something has to be done. Equally balanced by the fact that many people don't think it exists as racism, institutional racism, or racism of any kind, or even worse, they don't want to do anything about it. So Black Lives Matters made a big impact, but it's always about what happens next, and will the legislation and the laws change to make sure this never has to happen again in our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Black Lives Matter, I think, will create a much better future, I hope, for all these racial divide, which should not exist in any way, shape, or form.
Not in 2020. Well, 2020 we'll give a pass to, because, I mean, I would be surprised if Hornets and Darth Vader suddenly arrive. So now we're getting towards the climax of our entire Golden Throne Awards, as we would see a reflection of it in the Oscars. We've got Best Picture, Best Male Actor, Best Female Actor. So not in any particular order. This is the Golden Throne Award for the event of the year. So what's the event of the year? This is the one thing that happened which made the whole world go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that that was just happening, and they couldn't take their eyes off it. And we've deliberately taken out coronavirus in this case, because it should dominate, but it wasn't just an event. It wasn't a one-off, let's watch it, let's see what's going to happen. It was the entire year. So what's the first nominee, Ernesto?
Our first nominee for Event of the Year is going to be the U.S. elections, which basically covered so many cycles, and it got us into debates, and it got us into watching for almost a full week to see who was going to be declared the next president, and then for over 40 days what was happening with all the lawsuits and whatever. And finally, I think we are coming in terms of what has happened. So that's our first nominee.
Coming to terms, well, some of us are and some of us aren't, but let's not go there until the 20th of January, and then you can go there, as some would say. Next up is the Together at Home concert. This was a load of superstars like Elton John and Paul McCartney and loads of other artists who put on a concert from their living room. People like John Legend, who are either doing it acoustic or they're doing it with different Zoom candidates all playing at the same time. But it was an amazing concert that just united everybody with the idea that if we're in lockdown and you can't go out to play and you can't see your favorite artists and you need something to let your hair down with, why don't the artists come to you? And it was an amazing experience that the world really enjoyed. And the beauty of it is it's still out there, so you can enjoy the individual artists still. And you can see actually who's good and who's fake by seeing how good they were when they play in their living room in their pants.
Our next nominee is a very similar event, which also got the entire world together, and that was the Disney Sing-Along Live, where people from all over the world got together to sing the Disney classics like Frozen.
Well, the thing about this, Ernesto, was it was actually the artists who were singing on the actual movies who were singing their scripts and their songs live. So you got to see who they were, not just the cartoon characters of it. And I think that was really different for many people. And it made it a really, really great experience for the entire family. And our final nomination is, I'll let you do this one.
It's going to be the release of Hamilton. And one of the things that a lot of people miss is the possibility of going to the theater and going to Broadway or going to just enjoy a play. And I think it was just amazing that they decided to release Hamilton so that everybody will be able to see it. And I think this has been one of the most seen plays in, where was it, Netflix or Amazon that was delivering it. And I saw it, and it was just an amazing experience. I tell you, it was a bit difficult to understand. I had to watch it twice. But now that I got to understand exactly the whole thing, it was just an amazing experience. And
so
the winner is...
Well, I was going to say it's not just a play, it's a musical. And the whole thing's been an experience. And the thing I think that makes Hamilton so fascinating is when you compare it to the politics of how America started with the US elections and the Trump-Biden stuff and the coronavirus and all the challenges. It just takes the whole story back hundreds of years, but almost every part of it felt super relevant in what we've experienced in 2020. So the winner is the US elections.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the 4 years leading towards the US elections. Now, being British, what we do in the UK is you go about 3 weeks leading up to the elections where the campaigning goes on, the speeches are made, and then after that you go, oh, you won, okay, didn't like it, but moving on.
Now, our next category is going to be the biggest villain of the year. And we have to absolutely have on this category coronavirus. Coronavirus completely changed the world. And there's absolutely no doubt that coronavirus is going to be our first nominee for the biggest villain of the year.
Absolutely. But you have to then look at our next nominees with people who were related to the coronavirus. And we've chosen for the next ones people who doubted it or said it didn't exist while watching millions around the world get infected and, of course, millions around the world dying. Next nominee is Donald Trump. Now, you may turn around and say, that's political, Dave, and Ernesto, you shouldn't do that. You said you were neutral. But when you've got the evidence of Donald Trump turning around and saying that he knew how dangerous this disease was, and he played it down deliberately because he was hoping it would disappear, then you've got to turn around and say that was not smart. It was very dangerous and led to a lot of people dying. And if you disagree with that, well, good luck to you on that. So Donald Trump is the next nominee.
Here, I would like to have two nominees on the first, on the same category, and they're going to be two Latin American presidents. One is Jair Messiah Bolsonaro from Brazil, which also completely on denial this virus didn't exist, and created a humongous mess. Brazil is one of the most populated countries on earth. And together with him, I would also like to say Andrés Manuel López Obrador, which is the president of Mexico, which, by the way, he said to everybody that he had created this little religious stamp with his picture that people could carry with them so that they will be protected from the coronavirus. And most people, not most people, but a lot of people in Mexico actually believe that this little religious stamp, just by carrying it with them, was going to be protecting them against the coronavirus. Obviously, a lot of people died because of just that thought.
And I thought I was just saying, well, if that was the vaccine, how come nobody sent one to me?
Exactly.
And you're my friend. You should have told me earlier.
Exactly.
Anyway, so who is the winner of the Golden Throne Award for the biggest villain in 2020? And we've already given you a big hint, and we have to say that without this, it would have been a very different world and a very different winner. The winner is coronavirus.
Absolutely.
It shaped the world. It sped everything up. The good thing is digitization came faster. We learned to love each other more, and we learned to be more independent. The bad thing is the economy, the deaths, the pandemic, the second pandemic of mental health, emotional challenges, and the fact that the whole world seems to be set back to the dark ages. And it'll take a couple of years before we see a real recovery or even hugs and trust coming back in again. So coronavirus, we salute the fact we hate you.
Our next category is going to be the biggest heroes of 2020. And we have many. We absolutely have many. And we have to definitely start with Dr. Anthony Fauci and all the first responders, all those healthcare workers that possibly you remember in March and April and May that at 7 o'clock they were clapping and that they were keeping us safe. And I definitely believe that those are our first heroes on this category.
I agree with you. Our next nominees are Amazon. Now, Amazon are seen by many people as the killers of retail. They're seen by many people as this big monster that gets all the other categories and eats them up and kills shops. But the truth is that what they did with logistics and delivery was actually incredible. They allowed you to be able to go shopping and get the stuff that you needed to be able to access for your business, for your family, for your day-to-day life, without having to leave the home. It's a definite fact that without Amazon, and there are other platforms available, but Amazon's the one that comes to mind most. So we'll categorize them all in the same thing, just call it Amazon. They were there for everybody, and they still are. They also became the biggest winners of the year purely because I think they made more profit than anybody else, because their business went through the roof, and people now are just so used to getting a credit card, surfing, and buying what they want just because they're bored, not even because they didn't need it.
Yeah, and our last nominee is going to be the food industry. And here we're talking about all the people that delivered the food whenever you order food, all the overeats, everybody that was working on the supermarket, everybody that was working on the different points of the chain, so that you will be able to get your milk, so that you will be able to get your meat, so that they didn't have us, that there was no things for us to eat. And I think they played a super important role throughout this pandemic. And I think still through 2021, they're going to be very important.
Absolutely. And without them, I mean, you think about our show with Toilet Paper Diaries, we were worried about not being able to get access to toilet paper. Well, you can't eat that unless you really love Nutella. Horrible joke. But the fact is that we were all worried that the supermarkets would be emptied and we'd end up with some kind of civil war, post-apocalyptic world where people would be fighting to just eat. And luckily, that's not been the case because the food has been available.
Yeah, on this category, we should have also included, but of course that happened too late on the year to get it to include. It was all the people that were involved on the vaccines. I mean, all the people from Moderna, all the people from Pfizer, all the people from AstraZeneca, which for a long time they were really working on making sure that the vaccine was there. So even though that we have not mentioned them for this category, I definitely believe that they have to be acknowledged at least.
Absolutely. And the winner of the Golden Throne Award for the biggest hero of 2020, we have to put it to, well, if there was a face and a name to give it, it would be Dr. Anthony Fauci, but it's the first responders. They have been, without doubt, the only reason that the human race is still here. Because the hospitals got full, they never stopped working, they never stopped looking after us, they never stopped collecting people. Even when they got sick and they died, they had to deal with incredible levels of stress, not just because of the fact they're working all the hours, in many cases without any equipment, to photos of them with bin bags around their faces, or just headscarves that they were using because they couldn't get access to enough equipment at first. And also the trauma of having to tell families that their loved one has gone, but having to be there holding the hand of another person who passes, in many cases turning around and saying that coronavirus is a hoax, this can't be happening. These people have been incredible and still will go on. And I would like to say that in 2021, when we do start filming TV shows and movies and all the rest of it, I would like to see a change from war movies and cop movies and people shooting each other to the real drama of saving people's lives. Because I think that if those people didn't have their head in that space and weren't at the top of their game, a larger amount of us wouldn't be around to be able to tell the tale. So they are the real heroes of 2020. So with that, these are the Golden Throne Awards. It's been a pleasure, Ernesto, sharing them with you. And I think there's a center of calm, which is happening right now. See you soon. Bye-bye.